Let's see if that's good now. Perfect. Okay. Sorry about the delay, everyone. Hello, all newcomers, and welcome back, my fellow Aeternians. As always, my name is Emperor AP, and today we are going to be talking about and writing the rules for ethical micronationalism. If you have been a part of the micronational community, you know that sometimes things can feel a little bit like the Wild West. Everybody's doing a different thing. Nobody knows why everybody's doing the things that they're doing. Everybody has different goals and aims. So we wanted to, in our last live stream, we had created the Gathering of Micronations. We started the Gathering of Micronations last time, which was a huge turnout. We had over 300 views. We had, I think, 12 micronations in attendance, actively having representatives at the gathering to sign and prepare to sign what we had called the Rules for Ethical Micronationalism. Now, this is the concept that we have some base standards in the community that most people would like to abide by. When you are creating a micronation, there are certain things that over 90% of the community agrees with and feels as though it is proper etiquette to establish. Whether you're a first-time micronationalist or whether you're someone who's seasoned in the game, you know that these are things that cause problems if they're not adhered to, and if they are adhered to, makes things like relations with another nation fly by a lot more smoothly. We have a lot of people jumping in the chat right now, so I'm going to go ahead and talk to some of those people. Hello, Whitewind, it's good to see you. Said, I was just looking at the premiere again. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Micronation of Gorth says, hello, it's good to see you, Gorth. Whitewind says, my volume is off. Sadly, I can't hear. I left my headphones in my locker, too. That's all right. We had started off without volume, so I'm glad we got that fixed for you all. He said 30 minutes and I can turn the volume on. I understand. Thank you. Baliga says hello. Hello, Baliga. It's good to see you. Whitewind says, who here plays Nitro Type? Baliga says, we're not late. That's a first. Yeah, it's great to have you. And you were at our Gathering of Micronations, so that's wonderful. Let me actually bring up what I'm talking about now when I'm talking about the rules of ethical micronationalism, because what I wanted to do today is to actually start outlining those rules. We had previously outlined them in our Gathering of Micronations. Now it is time to write them. We'd been asked on Twitter, we'd been asked in our live stream itself, and in a number of other places, including our Discord, when we were going to have the signing. There were these 12 nations that showed up and were ready to sign, but we want to talk about actually writing out in full what these ideas mean that we established in the Gathering of Micronations live stream. If you haven't seen that, I recommend you go check it out. It sort of lays the groundwork for all this. That was when we decided on these three basic tenets that most all micronations follow as far as their ethics. So, again, as you can see here, we have the rules of ethical micronationalism right there. That's going to be the introduction to our document. That's going to be our title page. And then our number one, as you can see from our previous establishment on the Gathering of Micronations stream, one of our first rules for ethical micronationalism is a non-aggression principle. Now, normally, if you're talking about something like, war, if you're talking about, large-scale macronational politics, a non-aggression principle is something that, kind of defines like a you stay on your side, I'll stay on my side, we don't mess with each other sort of thing. In a micronational context, this means something different entirely. A non-aggression principle in a micronational setting, or what I'm just going to call non-aggression, is the idea that you aren't looking to pick a fight with anyone for any reason. You are trying to develop your nation first and foremost, and that is the groundwork that other nations should conduct themselves around you with. When you are developing, you are trying to connect to other nations, you are trying to participate in events that are mutually beneficial, you are trying to gain things, you are not trying to tear others down. And that's what that non-aggression principle is about. The concept that if you are coming into the micronational community in bad faith, if you are trying to troll people, start wars, cause problems, that you are violating this first tenet principle of these rules. And these rules are all something that are voluntary for people to follow. they're going to be signed by these different nations, and then those nations are going to choose to uphold those in their own realms of existence, in their own communities, in their own subsets of our larger micronational community. I know for the Empire of Aeternia, as we are the ones drafting this, we are of course going to be applying that ourselves, and we are going to be applying that to our Discord server. So if you're one of the many people who are already a part of our Discord server, whether you are a micronationalist or not, this will play an effect on your role in our Discord, because we are going to be using these to apply to our general rules for the server to make sure that people who are getting on the server are acting appropriately, are being kind to each other, being respectful of each other, and know what we expect from those micronations that we wish to have relationships with. We have 4 viewers. Stefan George says, hello, sorry for being late. That's all right. Thank you for joining us, Stefan. We are talking about the first of those tenet principles that we identified in our Gathering of Micronations stream. The biggest one of those, the number one that everybody agreed with, is this non-aggression idea. This concept that you shouldn't be a micronation picking a fight. You shouldn't be looking for that. And so we're going to continue that. Gorth says, us micronations are brothers. We shouldn't fight. 100%. And that's the whole idea here, is that it is so hard for anybody to get any ground laid in developing their micronation as it is. It's tough. So we should be helping each other and learning from each other instead of trying to drag each other down. So that's going to be the first idea. We are going to start drafting that. Let me actually move my microphone away for a second so that I can start to type. So we are going to be trying to describe this non-aggression principle here. And we're going to say, I want to change my font, sorry. Everything has been in this nice, pretty Unica 1, and then it tried to default to Arial, so let me fix that. As micronations, we are united in the struggle to gain recognition and personal independence for our communities, and therefore should always include each other's best interest in our own should always include each other's, and therefore we should always be aiming, there we go, I think that's a better way to describe it. We should always be, and therefore, as micronationalists, we should always be promoting cooperation over I'm trying to figure out how to word this. As micronations, we are united in the struggle to gain recognition and personal independence for our communities. And therefore, as micronationalists, we should always be promoting cooperation over conflict. Conflict. It should be expected then of all micronations, expected then that all micronations should enter into others in the community in good faith and no ill will. Good faith to learn and develop without ill will. So essentially, the concept of this, I'm not sure if you guys could hear me when I was typing all this out, but the concept of this is for the non-aggression part of our ethics code here. We are going to be saying that micronations are united. We just as Stefan put, just as Gorth put, us micronations are brothers. We shouldn't fight. So we are united in this struggle to try and achieve for our communities, and therefore we should not be tearing our communities down. And therefore, it should be expected that any micronation who has another micronation coming to speak to them should enter into those talks in good faith. As a micronationalist, as someone who runs a micronation, I am going to be, and not all micronationalists are people who run micronations, but in my specific instance, as the Emperor of the Empire of Aeternia, when another micronation comes to me asking for an alliance or wanting to discuss trade or wanting to, inquire about some of the services or things that we offer, I should always come to the table with my best foot forward. I should always be hoping for a positive relationship with that group, and I should always be looking to the future of positive collaborations. Now, I should also be able to expect that of that other nation. So if either of us comes to the table, if either of us starts our discussions with ill will toward each other, wanting to cause problems for the other side, wanting to try and tear each other down, then it leads to a snowball effect of continued negative discourse. It constantly will cause problems not only between our two nations' relationships, but anybody who is connected to us via our larger communities. This can bring into effect large consequences for niche areas of our micronational community where, an entire Discord server may be, up in arms about some stuff, and there may be a lot of back and forth. So, that's how Twitter beef starts and everything else. So we're just trying to stamp that out as much as possible with this non-aggression clause, just saying that people should come to the table with their best foot forward. And I think that's pretty fair to say. I think that's pretty easy for everybody to agree to, and that's why I think we had such overwhelming support for it when we initially established it. Okay, let's continue. Let's switch again to Unica 1. And let's continue our description as well. For any of you who have been curious about, how to write things like this, this of course isn't the same as a treaty. If you were going to be writing something like an alliance form with another nation, if you were going to be drafting some sort of treaty or something, you would of course want to put a little bit of a different developmental style on it. But the reason that we're doing it like this is because it is a voluntary show of support for a specific code of ethics. But if you have ever been curious about how to write anything like this for official government documentation, for trying to send out to other micronations, this is a pretty professional way to do it, and so I would recommend you follow along. Let me see. Baliga said, one rule should be no micronational war. That's exactly what that non-aggression part is about. It's saying you shouldn't be looking for war. You shouldn't be looking for that. But we will add that in some way. Gorth says, us micronations should create something like the United Nations so these rules can be more enforced. No, I disagree with that. I'm not big into micronational organizations. I don't believe they help very much, at least in this current standing of their abilities. I don't think that'll necessarily always be the case, but as of right now, I want this to be something that is voluntary. Every nation decides upon their own accord to either accept these rules and to sign them and to enforce them themselves, or to not. If I enforce these rules, for example, in our Discord, all that means is if I see a nation that's causing problems for people and in my mind breaking this code of ethics, I will remove them from the Discord server. they'll just be kicked out. They'll know these rules, and they will be removed from that. So, that being the case, it is easily able to be self-enforced by any nation that signs it. I shouldn't have to, or there shouldn't be any benefit to me, causing problems for other nations because they're not following these rules. That's not what this is about. Everybody can choose to do their own thing in micronationalism. What this is about is getting the parts of the community together who agree with this, the 90% against the 10%, that we are going to support these rules between ourselves. That if you come within a community of micronationalists that does have these rules established and does uphold these rules internally, that you are going to have a hard time navigating that environment, or even staying in that environment, if you do not as well follow along. So that's what this is about. It's about developing a code of ethics. It's about developing a moral standard for micronationalism. United Republics of Enslavia says, my micronation is united of ethnic minorities. Very cool. United Republics of Enslavia says, this is a union. We are not a union. This is not about being a union. This is about developing, again, a code of ethics for micronationalism that you can choose to sign independently and that you would enforce independently for your community, for the people who are citizens of your nation, for anybody who establishes connection and relations with your nation. That is what this is about, not necessarily about trying to create some organization by any means. North America, ERNA says, hello everyone. Hello ERNA, it's good to see you. FactFiend1000 says, a micronational United Nations would have to be actually competent. I agree. And that's something that's really difficult. Not only that, I think there has to be some monetary incentive, because that's the whole thing with micronations and micronational organizations. If there isn't anything that, binds them to it, if there isn't anything that makes it necessary for them to be a part of it, then it doesn't become beneficial to anybody, so it doesn't work. Million Hawk said, hey, it's good to see you, Million Hawk. Stefan says, a micronational UN has been tried 1,000 times already. I completely agree. White Wind says, what about a micronational NATO? Similar thing. All of these are micronational organizations. Even NATO, is an organization, and it does not have... NATO is something that is specifically economic as well, so it has actual benefits and consequences to its existence for the member states that are part of it. Micronations have a very hard time actually enforcing anything like that, and for a number of reasons that we can talk about in the future. Republics of Enslavia says, I started a union of micronations. It opens trade more. I'm glad. ERNA says no. Whiteman says, did he answer the question to inviting me as a commenter or no? I'm sorry, I haven't seen that. Hey, yo, can I be invited to that doc as a commenter? Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, I can probably do that. If you send me a DM about it on Discord, with your email address, I will send this to you and allow you to be a commenter on it. Okay, cool. So, respect of governance. That is what I called the second rule that we created, again, in our Gathering of Micronation stream from a few days ago. And the idea that we came up with was no judgment based solely on government type. This doesn't mean that you can't dislike an ideology. You know what I mean? Being something like, a religious extremist or a fascist or something like that is an ideology, not a government type. A government type would be specifically based on the structure of the organization. So just, the way that the hierarchy is established, whether that's a democracy, whether that's a republic, whether that's a monarchy, whether that's anarchism, whether that, whatever the design of the government is, you should not be basing judgment solely off of that. You shouldn't say, I don't like any democratic micronation, or I don't like any monarchist micronation, because everybody who is a micronationalist has a different reason for having developed their micronation, and therefore a different reason as to the effectiveness of a particular government type that they have chosen. It's like choosing a class in an RPG. Everyone has a different play style when they play a game. Everybody has a different type of achievement that they're hoping to get out of the game, so everybody's going to choose a class that they feel like best fits them. A type of warrior, or a rogue, or a magician, or whatever, a mage or whatever. All all of these are going to be different and unique based on the situation of the micronation. Same thing with your government type. So you should not judge a micronation solely based on their government type. You should judge them based on their actions and what they're doing and their ideology, which are all different, and their symbols, which are all different than the government type itself. There can be good, communist micronations. There can be bad communist micronations. There can be good monarchical micronations. There can be bad monarchist micronations. So it is all based around not judging specifically based on the governance type. That is the respect of governance. Essentially saying everybody has the right to govern in their own way, and that the hierarchy of that governance should not be the thing that determines whether or not a micronation supports or is against you. So, again, let me put down my microphone for a second, and I will be typing that up. And you can see me kind of struggle to type as well, because I have to stand on my tippy toes to do this, because it's so high up. Oh no, it's going to go back to Arial. Gosh. As micronations, all micronations are created under unique circumstances and unique goals which determine a government type, which determine a government type to best suit their needs. This being the case, no nation should be judged solely on the type of government that they ascribe to, i.e. democracy, monarchy, anarchy, republic, etc. Micronation, I'll just call it nation. Nations should instead be judged solely based on their actions, ideology, and symbols, and representative symbols. For nations should instead be judged based on their actions, ideology, and representative symbols as proof of their ethics. Perfect. So, if you guys can read that, I will read over it just one more time to make sure everybody heard it and they got it. Also, thank you guys for 8 viewers. If you like this video, please make sure to like it. We're trying to teach people about micronations today, as we are almost every day, and so it helps a lot when you guys can like the video. It helps to bring people into live stream right now, and it also helps us to get this further out to more people. All the work that we put in means a lot every single time you guys share this, get this out further, like it, comment, all of that. So, respective governance. All micronations are created under unique circumstances and unique goals which determine a government type to best suit their needs. Everybody's is different. The government that you choose is going to be based on that. That being the case, no nation should be judged solely on the type of government they ascribe to, i.e. democracy, monarchy, anarchy, republic, etc. Nations should instead be judged based on their actions, ideology, and representative symbols as proof of their ethics. So saying just because you ascribe to some particular hierarchy, sure, that is a part of your ideology, but it also may just be based around practicality in your circumstance, not necessarily some ethical or moral, adversarial position to someone else. You probably aren't a democracy because you hate monarchists. You probably aren't a monarchist because you hate democracies. Although that could be the case, and that would be shown further in your ideology, your actions, and representative symbols, those things can be completely separate. They can be mutually exclusive. So that's the point of this, is to say don't judge somebody just based on the cover. Don't judge somebody just based on what type of government they have, because there's plenty of ostracizing that happens in this community. There's plenty of othering that happens in this community, where people will say, we don't want any communist micronations here, we don't want any democratic micronations here, we don't want any monarchies here, we don't want any anarchists here, because they feel like having some particular governmental type or some way of organizing equates to some ethical difference, which is not always the case. It can be the case, again, and that would show through based on action, ideology, representative symbols, etc., but does not have to be the case. Perfect. A lot of comments. I'm going to go through and continue reading the comments in just a second, but I want to continue on to our third point here. The right to fair introduction. What I called that was just fair introduction. And it means the same thing. Its purpose is the same as the one described in our gathering of micronations. It essentially means, hey, a right to fair introduction is allowing someone to make the case for their nation. You're not going to immediately be aggressive to another nation. If a nation just shows up, all of a sudden there's a brand new nation in the Reddit or on Twitter or on your Discord, and they show up, poof, out of nowhere. They're a brand new nation. One, you're not going to be directly aggressive to them. Right off the bat, there's no reason to start a war, to cause problems, or to do whatever, or to say, you're subservient to me now, or whatever. You should not start off with an aggressive stance, and you should expect that micronation is not going to start off with an aggressive stance. Furthermore, once that nation has, once you've learned enough about that nation to understand their governmental type, you probably are going to figure out rather quickly, rather from the title of, what they call themselves online. A lot of the time nations are described by their governmental type. So, the Empire of Aeternia is an empire that, helps to describe a little bit of who we are. That's not as good an example, but there are plenty of, the People's Republic of, or the Democratic States of, or the Union of, or something like that describes what governmental type, what hierarchical function runs their society. So you should not judge based on either of those, because again, you should not judge based on aggression. You should not be aggressive, and you should not judge based on government type. Those are two of the things that you're going to figure out really quickly about a micronation. Are they just some aggressive, crazy spammer person? And if they're not, that's good, and they've passed that first ethical rule for micronationalism. And then the second is not judging on government type. If they're not judging anyone based on government type initially, you are not, then you're in good standing. And the third thing, the thing that's going to really open up the ability for two nations to converse and to start to figure out their relationship with respect to each other, is the right to fair introduction. Allowing a micronation that you are first establishing contact with to describe to you what their nation is without you immediately, jumping down their throats about it. Once you hear the pitch, then you can make your decisions. That pitch, that concept of their fair introduction, is probably going to have a lot of the description of their actions, ideology, and representative symbol in there. So that's going to say, hey, now I can go back to that second rule and say, well, I didn't judge them based on their government type, but now I'm judging them because of what I have seen them tell me firsthand that they are doing. And that is a perfectly reasonable way to judge a micronation, is to say, I'm not judging you based on the type of government you're running. I'm not, immediately trying to be aggressive to you regardless of who you are. I am waiting until I know enough about you to make an informed decision about your nation. And that also helps because it de-escalates all of that aggression that would happen in the first two steps, that I think is the biggest problem with a lot of micronational wars and with a lot of the reason why certain micronations don't like each other, is because they'll get caught up either right away in being aggressive to each other or in seeing what type of seeing what type of governmental structure the other has, and then becoming directly aggressive toward one another. So if you can eliminate those two factors in a nation's potential argument, you can very quickly start to help them establish connection to one another. And it makes it a lot more fluid a process for nations to converse with each other and to potentially find benefit in each other's communities. So that being the case, that final one there is fair introduction. All of these I'm going over right now once, but I plan to actually go over again with a little bit more nuance. Right now I'm just trying to write down the core definitions of these things, so 1, 2, 3 sentences on each, and then we're going to go back through and actually more reasonably write out longer descriptions, longer caveats to these rules, things like that will help to describe it further. Once we finish this today, what I am hoping to do is to take this and actually send it out to all of the micronations who have been a part of that. So if you want to be a part of this, please, and you want to have your nation sign it and uphold it, please Discord me, private DM me on Discord, on our Discord server, or you can actually email us at eternianempire@gmail.com to get in on that. Link in the description, also in the About Us section of our channel. So far, those nations were Sardinia, United Empire, Grand Duchy of South Florida, Republic of Moroccan, Kingdom of Aslaria, the Onyx Union, Theos Nomos, Union of Soviet Communist Republics, the Monarchy of Zelexia, New America, Truteau, Republic of Baliga, Sardustistan, Sabatat, Rhodesia, West Lataglia, Esnia, Empire of Dogestan, Republic of Roscamistan, Republic of Olav, and the Empire of Aeternia. So, we're going to be sending out all of that to those nations, but in addition, I would like to have people reach out to me as well. Some of these nations I don't have contact info for, so I'm going to be trying to reach out to as many as I can, but if I don't have contact info for you, you think I may not, please go ahead and just reach out to me first, so that way I can get this to you and we can make sure it's signed. Because I want to do a big announcement. Once we've had as many signatures on this as we can from as many different supporting nations, I want to go big on this and I want to promote it and I want to say, hey, we have come to a consensus on some ideas in the micronational community that a lot of micronations subscribe to. Master Dionite, hello, it's good to see you. Okay, so we have a lot of different things. Ari says you, and then says Windingo says hi, it's good to see you, Windingo. Francisco says hello from war-torn Rhodesia. It's great to see you, AP. It's good to see you, Francisco. What happened in Rhodesia? Baliga says micronational organizations have been tried and very few have had any effect on the nations involved. And I completely agree with that. Again, I think it is about resources. If your nation cannot survive and develop and produce positive gains on its own, it's not impossible for the addition of support from other nations to make that easier, but it's unlikely because more than likely the nations who are going to be a part of that with you also are struggling with the same issues, and so if nobody can overcome the same hurdles, then nobody makes any progress. You would have to have nations who are more well established and more developed to be a part of those organizations to help out the smaller nations that are in there, but that's not generally beneficial to those larger nations. So it becomes a whole difficult process that we can talk about again in another video. But real quick, I want to go back to our fair introduction and try and write something there. If you guys have any ideas in mind for how I should be wording some of these things, or with the way that I am describing them, please message me, please throw it in the comments, and I will try and read it. Um, Nation of Gorth says, I'm going to sign this 100%. Thank you so much, Gorth. That means a lot. Again, we are probably going to make the first big announcements about it on our Discord. So if you check our Discord and you keep up with that, that is where we're going to be doing as much of this as possible. As well, guys, please hang out and please enjoy the rest of the stream with us, because right now we have 7 viewers. We had 8 a second ago. We got up to, I think, 9 or 10 as the max on this stream. But if you guys hang out with us, right now we're at about 30 minutes. So, 7 viewers for 30 minutes, that's about 4.5 hours of watch time. 3.5 hours of watch time, excuse me. So if we can get to an hour, then we'll have 7, 2 hours, 14. We can really start to stack some watch time hours, because we're getting close. We're at like 3,300 watch time hours now, on our track to 4,000. So we only need 700 more. I'm going to try and like sprint through a whole bunch of live streams this coming week and the next one, to hopefully push us by the end of the year to getting pretty dang close to that watch time if we can achieve it. We're going to have a few big blowout events coming up, so hopefully that'll push us over the edge. And you guys are helping with that, so thank you. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to type up that fair introduction part. All micronations have a different history, philosophy, all micronations, and history, philosophy, and goal and therefore should be allowed without prejudice to and their intentions to the nations which they hope to establish relations with. Okay. I said Al micronations, but I don't mean some guy named Al who runs all the micronations, although that's probably the case somewhere. I'm trying to say all micronations have a different history, philosophy, and goal, and therefore should be allowed without prejudice to declare themselves and their intentions to the nations which they hope to establish relations with. That, again, just this general concept that you should not be judging a micronation before you get to hear their sales pitch, right? That's what those other 2 rules were establishing. Don't just go targeting everyone. That's the biggest one. That's the number 1, and that's honestly, probably like 60% of the problems in the micronational community are people who don't even get to the 2nd or 3rd ethical rule. They're not even thinking about that. They are starting off with just going into a server, spamming it, causing a whole bunch of problems for people, trolling, being inappropriate, not taking their role as a micronationalist seriously. So if we can have that first rule, that non-aggression description for ethics, clearly defined for a lot of nations, it will hopefully reduce that by a lot, or at least help to keep those people out of a majority of the micronational community. And the larger part of the micronational community that becomes inhospitable for those people, the easier that it will be for us to create a new culture which encourages proper ethical micronationalism. So that being the case, once you have that, then we're looking into, again, the non-judgment based on government type, which again is a huge, it feels like a turf war, monarchists versus democracies versus all these other things. So instead of having that as the basis for judgment, we ask that people reserve their prejudices and instead allow for a fair introduction, which comes in here. Also 9 viewers, guys. Again, if you could like that, it means a lot. Like that video. The longer that we hang out here, the more watch time we get, trying to get to that 3,400 right now, and we're not far away, honestly. and then 3,500, and then we'll be counting down from 500 till we hit monetization. But that fair introduction has a very key point in it, that everybody is unique. All micronations are unique, as we've established in those previous ones, but that they should be allowed without prejudice to declare themselves and their intentions to the nations which they hope to establish relationship with. At this point in the process, most nations are not aggressive. Most nations don't have any reason to be. If you're hearing somebody's pitch, you've probably decided amongst yourself, that there's some benefit to contact with these people, that these people are people that you can tolerate, at least to some degree. So that being the case, it is important that that we describe this just for those people who may be in the middle. Again, I don't think this will be a problem for most people once you get to this point in the process. If you've been ethical for the first two steps, you're probably going to be ethical on this one, but just in case, it's important to describe that. And in addition, this allows for some pretty unique things. Micronations, I don't think I've ever met a micronation who hasn't tried to give a sales pitch of what their idea for their micronation is once you start talking to them about it. It's just something that's a fairly natural part of the connection process between different micronations, whether you call it establishing relations, whether you call it, having talks with another nation. A lot of the time, this is one of those first steps. And so getting over the hurdle of having people have, arguments and issues in this first step makes it a lot easier. And again, the benefit of this is that once you hear somebody's pitch, if you really don't like it, you just straight up don't have to respond to it. You just don't have to talk to that person. And you can make your decision as to how you want to approach your relations with that nation from that point. But it gives you all the necessary information to say, I'm not judging this person based off of their government type. I'm not judging this entire community based off of how they choose to elect their hierarchy. I am not judging this group of people based off of some initial preconceived understanding of what they are. I am actually hearing what they are saying themselves as their description of themselves, and now I am making an informed decision based off of their description. So that way, there is no way for anybody to claim that you're doing something unreasonable, and your nation can be ensured to be very ethical simply on the grounds that you can say, the reason I chose not to ally with this nation was because in their own description, in their own words, they said that they support this thing. Their ideology is about this, and I do not align with that ideology. My nation doesn't support this particular symbolism that they use or this particular action that they have done before, and therefore we will not be establishing relations with them. But it also allows the opportunity for plenty of beneficial things to ring in your ear, for them to say, oh, well, we have a big lumber trade, and you to go, oh, I didn't even know your nation had a big lumber trade. I was about to dislike them because they were an anarchist nation, but now that I know they have a big lumber trade, we design woodworking classes. That's what we do, is we market woodworking classes to people. So, oh man, if only we had the additional lumber that we needed to be able to supply more of these classes, that would be fantastic. And now we have a connection to this nation. So there is absolutely benefit to just hearing someone's pitch out. Once you do, that'll probably be sent in an email, that'll probably be sent as a Discord message or something like that, a Reddit DM or whatever. Or even just a comment on something. I've seen plenty of people in message boards, or plenty of people in other posts on other sites, just in the comments, talking to each other and having their connections first made there. So if you can reserve the feeling of wanting to be like a troll or wanting to, stir something up in the comments, if you can hold back on that and let somebody actually make their pitch to you, you may find that there's a good bit of connection between the two of your nations. Real quick, I'm going to look at our comments, but I want to continue to start specifying down on some of these, what I mean by certain things, what things are, an example, more okay, less okay with these. I don't want to get too specific because I feel like the more specific that we get with these ethics, the less they will apply to a large majority of nations. Right now, we are trying to design just basic ethics that like 90% of the community can subscribe to. If we can do that, then it makes the worst part of the micronational community really, really hard to survive, and it makes them have to go into areas of the community that aren't really going to be super heavily populated. So it removes a lot of the troll element from micronationalism. And that's kind of the idea here. Okay, so Master Dionite says, I sent you an email contact info on Discord. Thank you so much, Master Dionite. People's Republic of Baliga says, we may sign this, but need a majority in Parliament. Personally, I would like to sign it, though. Thank you very much, Baliga. I'm sure the leader's support will have great sway in that, but I'm excited to hear the results of the parliamentary decision. And I honorably await that. Matt says, I'll be right back. Okay, it's good to see you, Matt. Hey, we have 9 viewers. Again, thank you so much. Hey, Kingdom of Arcovia said, greetings. Very good point. Thank you very much. As well, King Carmenate, have you been able to see our Discord messages? I messaged you on Discord. I hope everything is going well. I just kind of updated you on our end of things, and I am excited to hear back from you. Hopefully, as well, Arcovia can consider signing these. Again, it's just general ethics for micronationalists, and I am hoping to continue to spread this far and wide in the community. Micronation of Gorth says, my goal is to get recognized by the United Nations, by the United Kingdom, and maybe more countries. Absolutely. And that is a really hard thing to do. And that's why coming up with some of these ethics, some of these ideas for a base standard of, policy in micronations, and having that be something that is self-reported, and self-dictated is really, really important. If you can show that by your own accord you are at a high ethical standard, then it makes other communities, whether it's another country, whether it's, even just a news station that wants to pick up your story or something like that, feel a lot safer about talking to you. Because when people don't know what your morals are, when people don't know about how your nation will do things, they can't determine whether or not they want to be friends with you, because all of a sudden, you may have some really extremist viewpoint that they didn't realize. So it's important here to be able to have some baseline. If you can sign this, it says, hey, there are at least some things that we hold ourselves to a standard to. And this isn't a super high ethical standard. I think a lot of these are pretty generic, but it's important, again, to just define for our community. Because right now, most micronations don't have any general consensus as to how micronations should behave or how they should interact with each other. Arcovia said, yes, sorry, didn't reply back yet. That's all good. I look forward to hearing from you. ERNA says, what's your plan? Great question. Homegrown Gamer Kid said, I just finished up an FNF mod update on something called Scratch. Very cool. I'm excited to see how that goes, Onyx. Also, Onyx, please reach out to us on Discord. I'm excited to continue talking to you about content. Okay, so fair introduction. Let's go back up here to non-aggression, because now I think there are specific things that we need to define in non-aggression to really describe what that means. Again, the challenge here is that we want to keep these things as descriptive as possible. I'm going to jump screens so I can kind of focus in on what I'm saying here, but that's the big idea, right? We are trying to create something which doesn't push too many buttons for other nations. So in doing this, we have to tread very carefully in the way that we describe these rules, because if these rules are too laissez-faire, if they're too generally described, then there's this problem where, oh, you didn't, I signed the non-aggression thing, but you didn't specify that meant that I couldn't just start a war with everybody, because you didn't write it specifically in the rules. So I want to have it, and again, these are all self-enforced things, so even if, you do break the rule, it's not like there's a penalty, it's just that you're not behaving ethically. And if there is a nation that becomes famed for, signing the ethics and then does not ascribe to those ethics, we may choose to remove their nation's name from the signing. But that would be about the largest penalty, and that would have to be something that's fairly glaring. That being the case, though, I think for all other circumstances, it's just about describing what we mean here. So that way nations legitimately understand what we're talking about and feel comfortable signing it, and also feel comfortable upholding it. You know, this right here, just saying that everybody should be treated nice and you shouldn't start fights with people, doesn't give a ton of context information. So I think that's a little bit important. And I want to try and figure that out. So I'm going to reread this again, and then I'm going to kind of think to myself, you know, what is an addition that we need to add in here? What do we need to specify? So as micronations, we are united in the struggle to gain recognition and personal independence for our communities. Everybody wants their community to achieve success. Everybody wants their community to be recognized. Therefore, as micronationalists, we should always be promoting cooperation over conflict, right? General statement, that's not too specific. Everybody should try to get along. Cooperation is always better than conflict. However, it should be expected then that all micronations should enter into talks with others in the community in good faith to learn and develop without ill will. Don't start off causing problems. Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. This is an interesting situation. I'm gonna be getting off in about 30 minutes to go with Tiffany somewhere, but real quick, I want to polish off some of these and get just a basic rule set down. Now, again, I'm going to be sharing this with people and we'll have discussions about it. The reason being, I'm going to create this initial draft and have people start to sign it, but this will be continually brought up and continually discussed in following gatherings of the Gathering of Micronations events. We're going to continue those events, obviously. We may even have another one this month, so that's something to look forward to potentially toward the latter end of the month. I've been asked about when our next one will be, so we're going to have to schedule that pretty quickly. But if we sign this and we have a first draft created and everybody signs it, we can continue to have nations bring this up and talk about specifics that they would like seen in this at different Gathering of Micronations events. So this is an ongoing thing. Don't think that this is the end-all be-all. We will be continuing with it. But that being the case, let me real quick jump into that continuation. So this I'm gonna put the mic down and we'll continue speaking. Let me know if you guys can hear me all right. And let me see actually if I can jump back into my online screen so you guys can see what I'm typing. There we go. Okay. So oh gosh, it's always trying to go back to Arial. I don't know why, but it just defaults to Arial and it's annoying. Therefore, micronations in high ethical standing war or other targeted acts of aggression, including online harassment, toward other nations, even if it is in retaliation to a prior citing event. So, addition to the non-aggression part of things. So wrapping up saying, it should be expected then that all micronations should enter into talks with others in the community in good faith to learn and develop without ill will. Therefore, micronations in high ethical standing should not seek out war or other targeted acts of aggression, including online harassment toward other nations, even if it is in retaliation to a prior inciting event. So what I'm saying is, if somebody starts, spamming your Discord server and saying we're at war and causing all these problems, you should not then go out of your way to continue doing that to them. You shouldn't say, oh, they got us, so even though we abide by the ethics of these rules, even though we signed this, well, now we have justification, so now we're going to get on their level and we're going to start spamming them and we're going to start emailing them and we're going to start trying to hack them and doing all this stuff. It's not worth it. It's never beneficial to the actual development of your nation, and it takes time out of the development of your nation to go out and do that, to go out and cause those problems. So it's not worth it, and it's not helpful. If you are being targeted by another nation, and this is something that is within a community that has signed and agreed to these rules, you should bring it up to them. You should, if you've signed it personally, you can say, hey, I know that I'm being compliant to these ethics. I am following these ethics. But in addition, if it is, for example, in our Discord server, let us know and we will handle that situation based on a breaking of this rule structure, which needs to be agreed to by parties who are going to be participating in our Discord server. Specifically for us, and again, that goes to anybody else who is going to be running a Discord server or running an online space in which other micronationalists are going to be participating, if you agree to these terms. So that's the concept. Some people said that they couldn't hear me. Again, I think it was because I moved the microphone. Whenever I'm trying to type, I'll have to move the microphone away, but that's just something that can't be helped too much. My volume's actually all the way up on my microphone, and now that I'm up close to it, I'm sure you can hear me a bit better. But when I put it away, it's significantly harder to hear. It's just a directional microphone, so I'm sorry about the inconvenience, but I try to recap once I finish typing what I have said. So I hope that works out for everybody. Okay, so again, I'm gonna write down that specific of, if it is within a community that already supports these rules, then you should seek out that sort of thing. Actually, what I'll go ahead and do is I will write an introduction into this. So that way I don't have to keep writing it at every rule. I will instead, like I said, go ahead and create here. Let's go to heading 1. Go to Unica 1, heading 1, Unica 1, and I will call this introduction. Okay, so here's our introduction. Our introduction statement is going to say, in signing this document, all parties agree to personally uphold these ethics to the best of their ability within their sphere of influence, and take on the task of overseeing the compliance of these ethics by the communities that they influence. So, that's essentially saying, hey, if you're going to, and let me fix that. Let me make sure all the other ones are good. Fair introduction got messed up. There we go. Okay, perfect. So, in the rules for ethical micronationalism, we are saying, hey, you personally, if you sign this document, if your nation agrees to this, you need to be held accountable for these ethics. You need to first and foremost say, my nation and I as an individual am going to agree to these ethics and uphold these ethics. Then, in addition to that, we're saying you also, in agreeing to these ethics and upholding these ethics for your own actions, need to ensure that these ethics are upheld and maintained in the communities that you influence. So whether that's your Discord, your Reddit, your whatever, whether that's, in real life, in your local community, no matter what the context, if you have some sphere of influence over a community, that you should try your best to uphold compliance to these by the people who are going to be participating in that community. So that should be a big part of this. Is at every single step of this, in every single explanation, this introduction should be included. So that way we don't have to keep rewriting it over and over again that says, and then you make sure that you're going to uphold this rule as well. No, the entire ethical code is something that, if you agree to it, should be signed and stipulated that you are going to be specifically the one that is going to uphold that in your own personal life, as well as that you are going to be a representative of this to other people in your community, and that you are going to hold the members of your community up to these ethics. Okay, so let's see if we can't continue on. So we have a nice introduction that I think gives us pretty good leeway into explaining to people what this means, how it works, and what their role in it is. We then have, again, this continued non-aggression that describes in some more detail how it should work. Respective governance, I'm going to go ahead and reread this and then again try my best to come up with additional misunderstandings, places where there may need to be some clarification. All micronations are created under unique circumstances and unique goals. I'm going to change that to just nations as well, because really this can apply to any group of people, but it is something that specifically for nations, applies based on government type and things like that. But any nation, micro or otherwise, could apply these rules, I think, quite effectively. All nations are created under unique circumstances and unique goals, which determine a government type to best suit their needs. This being the case, no nation should be judged solely on the type of government that they ascribe to, i.e. democracy, monarchy, anarchy, republic, etc. Nations should instead be judged based on their actions, ideology, and representative symbols as a proof of their ethics. Perfect. So, I don't know that there's too much else that needs to be said about that. If there is, again, we can further define that, but it's just saying, hey, don't judge based on initial introduction to a specific type. I think that's pretty cut and dry. Fair introduction. Again, if anybody has any questions or if there's any misunderstandings here, or any way that you think this could be misconstrued, please let me know. Again, that's kind of why I tried to put this second part in there that says they should be judged instead based on actions, ideology, representative symbols as a proof of ethics. Fair introduction. All micronations have a different history, philosophy, and goal, and therefore should be allowed without prejudice to declare themselves and their intentions to the nation which they hope to establish relations with. Agreed. Yes, 100%. I think one of the things that should be a stipulation here is that this description, this pitch, should be unimpeded. You shouldn't be trying to stop, and that's the idea. If somebody's saying, hey, I want to pitch to you guys my communist micronation idea, this is, our nation, and then somebody comes in and says, well, first off, all communist micronations are stupid, so I'm not going to listen to what you're saying and all this stuff, then you're really not allowing them fair introduction. You're not giving them a chance to accurately describe what they're trying to do to the community that they've reached out to. So that's not fair. That's acting unethically. However, that does not include stipulations for when that introduction is inappropriate. If that introduction is unethical, for example, if there are a lot of, if there are slurs that are put into it, if there's, a lot of inappropriate conduct that is placed within that, or if they are trying to pitch some real extremist viewpoint or ideology, then that can be a different scenario. You can say, I'm going to stop you right there. The thing that you just started saying is inappropriate, and now I don't want to hear the rest of the pitch, simply because the pitch has become unethical. So I think there should be a description of ethical versus unethical introductions. And I'm gonna describe that a little bit here. Ethical introductions are ones which seek only to four. So right now, again, I'm just trying to describe ethical versus unethical introductions. Okay, so here's the full description for fair introduction. All micronations have a different history, philosophy, and goal, and therefore should be allowed without prejudice to declare themselves and their intentions to the nations which they hope to establish relations with. Ethical introductions are ones which seek only to distribute information about the nation which their introduction is for the purpose of seeking relations with other nations. Ethical introductions should not be impeded, as described above. Unethical introductions are those which contain inappropriate language, attempt to defame or aggress other nations, or those which seek to recruit for their ideology or nation when being introduced as a means of establishing relations with another nation. So, it's essentially this good faith idea. It's this concept that, so if you are legitimately trying to establish relations with another nation, I say, hey, I'm wanting to introduce myself. I'm Emperor AP of the Empire of Aeternia to your nation in the hope that we can establish relations. Here's a little bit about ourselves. We have the Arrow of Progress, which is our symbol and a part of who we are. We are an empire. We're wanting to be expansive. We're wanting to do all these things. We have technological pursuits. All of those things are completely justified within an ethical introduction. An unethical introduction would be something that you are claiming to be based around the concept of an introduction for establishing relations, but really has some ulterior motive. So, for example, if I said, hello, my name is Emperor AP, the Empire of Aeternia, and I am trying to establish relations with your nation. Our nation has 100% free citizenship. Anybody can join as a citizen. Here's the top 10 reasons why Aeternian citizenship is better than your nation's citizenship. And you start like posting that to another nation's Discord server. You have, or their email or whatever, you have initially described this as an introduction for the means of establishing relations with that nation and building a connection. But if you are entering that in bad faith, if you are lying about the true intentions of what that is, or if what you are trying to do becomes something that is unethical, becomes something that is about another approach, then that should be disregarded. That nation at that point has perfect ethical justification for saying, this is no longer what I thought it was, this is not appropriate, I am not going to be entertaining this. And that is where an importance comes in. It has to be well understood that you can't flip-flop around on stuff like that. I think this is going to be where we keep it for today. I am going to be sending this out on our Discord after I create an official signature page for it. Expect that probably this afternoon within the next few hours. I'm also going to be updating our micronational map a little bit, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, I can't wait for everybody. Global Micronational Federation asks, just joined. Can someone give me a rundown of what's up? First off, the first thing that's up is if you could like the video, it helps us a lot. As well, trying to spread this out, it means a ton for us. The other thing, we've been talking about creating ethical rules for micronations. If you didn't see our Gathering of Micronations video, you should check that out. We had like 12 or 15 or something nations coming to represent their people in talking about what is important to them as nations. We ended up deciding at that point that we needed to create a general rule of ethics for micronations, something that could be personally upheld by individual nations and signed so that they show support for just a baseline rule of ethics for micronations. We've come up with a few rules based in that stream that we are now expanding into a final document to be signed. In future iterations of the Gathering of Micronations, we will be having adaptations of this and expansions of it, but until then we are going to sign this initial draft. I hope you all have a great afternoon. Again, please like the video if you can. Please share it around. If you didn't get the full effect of what this was, please go back and rewatch the stream. It helps a lot with our watch time, but it also allows you to get full information. If you want to ask questions about this, please DM me on Discord or email me at eternianempire@gmail.com. We're going to be, again, spreading this around our Discord. If anybody who has been a part of our Gathering of Micronations event or this event who wants to have their nation sign this and uphold this and keep this as a basic ethical standard for their micronational community, please definitely reach out to me so that I can send this to you and we can get it signed. Hopefully within the next few days I will have an official signing video where, in addition to all the signatures that we add here from these micronations, we will also be adding in my signature and the Aeternian seal, the official seal of the Empire of Aeternia. So I can't wait until then. We also have 12 viewers now. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Again, if you didn't get a chance to view the whole stream, I definitely recommend you go check it out after I end it. But I hope you all have a good afternoon. I've got to head out of here. I appreciate you guys. Y'all mean so much to me. And I will see you soon. Peace, everybody. Have a good afternoon.